Hi guys, yesterday we all saw that video of a fellow Kenyan being shot at close range by the police during protests. And what stood out is that when that gentleman was shot and he fell on the ground, he was actually holding onto a pack of masks, which he had been selling during the protests. Of course, the incident was very unfortunate, and we all hope that justice is served. But also I was reflecting, and that video brought forth the industrious nature of Kenyans. And of course, that nature of Kenyans where they go all out, even in the presence of risk, to be able to make an income stems from the hard economic times. That's why in this video, I want to discuss 7 protest business ideas. Those businesses you can do during times of protests. Of course, we all appreciate it is extremely risky, but then again, the reality is Kenyans are doing business because people won't stop doing business because of protests. At the end of the day, they need to get money for food, they need to pay for rent, they need to have their children go to school. And as such, people require money. That's why these ideas are amazing, but also we appreciate they are risky given you could be undertaking them while protests are happening. You are all much welcomed to the Money Daily YouTube channel. My name is Afagza Sifuna. And with that, the very first business idea which you can do during protest is the idea of you doing crisis logistics or even so emergency logistics. What do I mean? Let's take an example of Nairobi CBD. Of course, during protests, people are all over, and even unfortunately, the recent protest even we saw goons going into the Nairobi CBD with Fimbo. They were actually hitting people. And even as up to now, it isn't clear who had those goons to go to the CBD. But then again, that also meant that people closed their business, and yet the reality is that some people who wanted some products or goods moved between CBD to other places, right? You could provide crisis logistics, but then again, it means that your carriers are going to be at extremely high risk. Because so, for example, yesterday, even motorbikes being burnt down, those motorbikes which are being used by those goons, okay? But I'm thinking about it also realistically. If there are goods to be moved, during crisis is when the price are gonna be highest because people charge premium, reason being they know the risk which they're getting into. Whether it is moving goods from one place to another, whether it is even ride-hailing services, Uber or even other kind of taxis, moving people, they tend to charge high because they know that it is extremely risky for them to do business at that particular point in time. You can also venture into that and hopefully be able to make money while also appreciating that you are getting at an extremely high risk environment, which could actually lead to you losing whatever you're using to carry these goods. Okay? And then the second business idea which you can do during times of protest is you selling consumables. Consumables like, for example, selling masks, selling water, selling food, etc. These are things which are needed by protesters on the go. Because we all know, for example, people are tear gassed, there's running battles, etc. So water is needed, mask is needed, and even so emergency food. You can have the food ready in pack and in a way that someone can consume easily while they are on the go. And be sure protesters are going to buy these items as they continue protesting. So think about it and prepare and package these emergency consumables and food in a good way, and be sure you might have a good chunk of people buying because already protesters have come together at a central place, so customers are already there. But then also remember, you also need to be checking your back, because you're going to be selling in real time in the presence of or the vicinity of protest, and that also means that you might be at risk in case you are not planning to be part of those protests. But then again, you could be able to make money through selling emergency food, water, masks, you name it. And then guys, the third business which you can do during protest is you selling portable power banks or power chargers and also communication kits. What do I mean? We're talking about these protests even happening whole day long. Mind you, if they're happening, for example, in the central business district, shops are closed, okay? Those spots, like for example, even hotels where somebody can sit maybe and charge a phone are also closed. Be rest assured, if you sell, for example, portable power banks and even some communication kits, you're gonna be able to make insane amount of money because people won't risk to have their phones go off. They'd rather, for example, spend 1,000, 2,000 to buy a portable power bank and even some communication kit, for example, containing even SIM cards, even credits, etc. And then be safe when it comes to day communicating and being active or online full time as opposed to they being offline. Okay? And then the fourth business idea which you could look to jump into is the idea of you selling emergency co-working spaces or even so safe spaces which people can come to hide, can come to stay until the temperatures outside cool. Guys, we all see these protests typically start and then all of a sudden there's crashing battles between maybe the security forces and protesters, etc. Tear gas being hurled all over the air, guys. And this actually makes the situation uncomfortable for people. And even, guys, we have professionals who maybe could be transiting through those areas of protest without their knowledge, and then they end up being caught there. Maybe someone is carrying their laptop, carrying their communication devices, they end up being caught in protests. Be sure these people will prefer to even go and settle somewhere in a safe co-creation space within these central business districts and be able to continue working or even so jump on emergency calls, etc. as they are waiting for this protest to cool off in case they were not part of this protest in the first place. So you having an idea of selling co-creation, co-working spaces, then it's gonna mean that you'll be able to make very quick sporadic rental money because those spaces are going to be rented by people working, or even so you can just go outright to selling those safe spaces, and then be sure you can also be able to make money. Okay? And then the fifth idea which we look to jump into is the idea of content creation. Basically, you're doing live streaming and ensuring communication reaches citizens on time. People out here want to be informed, and they want to be informed in real time with regards to what is happening out there. And by the way, gone are the days where only the mainstream media were able to streamline or to share this kind of news with us. Nowadays, with the advent of, for example, YouTube, Twitter, and many more online platforms out there, you can also be a very, very lethal content creator who capitalizes on protests to be able to share with the world what is happening in real time. And be sure in that too, you'll be able to make money either through you getting split share of revenues from these particular live stream platforms, or even so endorsements which are going to come with time once you have built a very good following. Okay? And then the sixth business idea which you can look to jump into is the idea of you doing safety training for those protests or even so emergency settings. Of course, for these, you won't be able to do it during the protests, but you can have that particular curriculum, which even you can do virtual training on how best to ensure you are safe during protest, on how best to ensure no one steals from you, on how best to ensure you position yourself well during protest, etc. Prepare that particular curriculum, be able to sell it online with the view of just assisting people out there to be able to enhance their awareness, to be able to ensure they are safe during such kind of environments, and be sure people are going to train and take this training. And most importantly, if your training is a paid for training, then be sure you're gonna be able to make awesome amount of money. Of course, I haven't seen such a thing, for example, in Kenya, where people are doing these trainings. But if there's a security expert out there and you think you can package this training, then go ahead, package it, and be sure people are gonna buy. Okay? And then the seventh and last business idea, which I think you can jump onto, is the idea of you coming up a tech application that shows real-time protest heat map. Basically, trying to share with people, for example, in the entire city, which roads are having very high amount of protesters, which roads, for example, are having confrontation, or which sections are having confrontations, etc. That, I think, is going to be a very valuable thing for people to be able to see in real time what is happening and then plan their routes effectively. If you can be able to do this with accuracy, then be sure you can also make a killing. Because I'm very sure people out there are going to really appreciate getting accurate information on how best to plan their routes, either to go to those protests or even so to avoid those protests. And if your app is very accurate, then be sure you're going to be able to make insane amount of money, because you're going to get those referrals in real time. And even so, if you're, for example, charging little amount of money for people to access this information, be sure you're going to be able to make money. Guys, what do you all think about these 7 business ideas? Do you think there are feasible business ideas which can be implemented during a protest? Share with me down below in the comment section. Let's continue discussing, and you all stay safe as you partake in this protest, or even so you're trying to avoid them. Whichever the case, ensure you stay safe, because at the end of the day, guys, we are aiming to have a better country, but also we are aiming to ensure that each and every life out there is preserved, because life is important. Cheers, guys, and look forward to share with you other amazing videos next time. Bye bye.